Well, hello there, physical activity enthusiasts. I know that there's very few of you out there, but I'm RidersDX and welcome to today's video where we're going to talk about a certain form of physical activity, and that is called video games. And more specifically, we're talking about the recent news regarding the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games franchise. And so, if the YouTube algorithm messed up and it brought you to this video and you have absolutely no idea what this is, then Mario and Sonic Olympic Games was a side franchise basically conjured up by Sega and Nintendo, where Mario and Sonic characters participated in a bunch of Olympic themed events in conjunction with the Olympic Games that was happening during that time. So whether it be like the Beijing Olympics in 2008 or maybe the Winter Olympics in 2010, there was always a Mario and Sonic game to go with it. But there's recently been news that the series has been discontinued, which we all have been sort of theorizing about because the Paris Olympics are currently going on right now, but this is the first Olympic Summer Games where there is no Mario and Sonic title. I mean, we've skipped over the Winter Olympics, but Mario and Sonic doesn't always have a game for the Winter Olympics. I think there's only like 2 of them. So, you know, people weren't really like raising their eyebrows when they saw there was no game for the Winter Olympics. But this is the first year with the Paris Olympics that there was no Mario and Sonic game in sight. And the confirmation comes from a person named Lee Crocker, who worked on most of the games in the franchise, who basically said that the Olympics committee decided not to renew their contract with Nintendo and Sega in pursuit of other ventures that they thought would get them more money, such as esports and NFTs. I recently watched this video from Kit and Krista where they basically talked about how the process of working on these games with Sega, Nintendo, and the Olympics committee was absolute hell because it would take 10,000 years for anything to get approved. And so it's absolutely not surprising at all to see that the Olympics committee thinks that NFTs are in right now. There just seems to be some sort of process in place where they're always a few years behind the trends, which is a great thing for an international committee that's handling one of the biggest events in the world. But I mean, what do I know? But that's not what we're going to talk about today's video. What we're going to talk about with today's video is why I actually think that with this like quote unquote demise is actually one of the greatest things that could happen to this franchise. And so Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, this series ending is a great thing ultimately. And here's why. I gotta say before we get into it that one of the most hilarious things that's come out of this entire situation is seeing how many people seem to ride and die for Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, because if I recall correctly, most of us consider this to be a pretty subpar franchise and a franchise that was really running its course that really should have only lasted like 1 or 2 games. But now you have all these fake bitches in the comments saying like, oh, this was such a great franchise, I can't believe it's canceled. I want to see how many of those people saying that actually have a physical copy of Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo Olympics. Please send me those pictures. The court deserves this evidence. In all seriousness, I think that for my personal opinion, when the Olympic Games was first announced all the way back in 2006 or 7, I was super excited for it as a huge Sonic fan that was also slowly becoming a Mario fan, you know, getting to games like Super Mario Galaxy and Paper Mario. I was really excited to see like these 2 iconic franchises come together. It was really big news at the time, especially considering the fact that Mario and Sonic were bitter rivals for the longest time, but now they were in a situation where they could work together and really lift each other up. So the game for the Beijing Olympics, I remember being super excited about that. It came, I played it, I enjoyed my time with it, and that was it. And then they started releasing games after that, and my interests like really quickly dissipated, because when you played one Olympic Games, you've kind of played the majority of most of them because they all do repeat events. Let's be honest here. I will say that they tried their best to make them as varied and as different as possible to really incentivize you playing each game, even adding things like story modes, more dream events, and adding more Olympic events with each one, more characters. They really did try to make this a flourishing franchise despite the fact that the Olympic Games themselves don't change that much year in and year out. And so you're going to hit a wall pretty quickly in terms of what you can do, especially if you're pumping out these games every 2 years. And the sales of these games have steadily declined as time has gone on as well. And so I know that people aren't actually that crazy about this franchise, but nonetheless, when you have the announcement of something totally being done, people are like, wow, I should have appreciated that more when I had it. But the thing is, it was kind of impossible to appreciate it fully because, again, there's only so many things you can do to an Olympic game without it becoming stale. And the franchise, unfortunately, was just getting stale. So the interest was just going down and down and down, despite the fact that they were making improvements and expansions of each game. This is my opinion, and I'm sure there's someone in the comment section that's going to say I'm flat out wrong and I should shut up, but I don't think there's there's that many people in the world that actually care about this series. I don't think there's that many people that actually care about Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games ending. What people actually care about is the fact that Mario and Sonic crossovers are allegedly ending. And here's the thing, that's not confirmed. It's not confirmed that Mario and Sonic are done. There is still a chance of something coming out after this. And this leads into my main point as to why this is actually a great thing. When you had the Olympic Games going on, there's really not much room for anything else Mario and Sonic related besides, Smash Brothers. Mario and Sonic really couldn't cross over in any other significant way because the Olympic Games was pretty much like where all the resources went into. And also, it's pretty simple, Mario and Sonic playing a bunch of Olympic Games, there's not a lot of stuff that needs to go on between Sega and Nintendo in terms of like creative direction that has to happen to make this work. It's a pretty simple concept, and Mario and Sonic are both easily amenable to like that environment and such. But now that this series is done, that doesn't mean that Nintendo and Sega's relationship is done. In fact, if anything, making these games over the past 10 or 15 years has really strengthened the relationship between Nintendo and Sega, as we've seen Sega do more than just these games. They've given Nintendo tons of exclusives to the consoles, for instance. They let Sonic and other franchises be in Smash Brothers. Sega has a really good relationship with Nintendo now, and so we may be ripe for an actual crossover between Mario and Sonic. And now that the Olympic Games are no longer a thing, there is a perfect opening for an actual Mario and Sonic game to come out. Now, we all know Sega would jump at the chance to do an actual Mario and Sonic game. We all know Sega would have no problem saying no. The ultimate wild card here, in my opinion, is Nintendo. Nintendo has to get an idea pitched to them that they love and are sold on. And that is Sega's job ultimately. Nintendo is not going to be out here thinking, oh, the Mario and Sonic Olympic Games are done now. What can we do with Mario and Sonic still? Sega has to take that step and give Nintendo a badass idea that they can't say no to. But if you consider the rise in both Mario and Sonic in terms of their fame and popularity, especially given the movie franchises, I'm sure that Sega doesn't really have to work that hard to come up with an idea that's going to impress Nintendo. Nintendo's going to see the numbers. They're going to see the fact that both of these franchises are at their peak right now in terms of popularity, and that a crossover game between them could result in major funds, especially considering the fact that Nintendo is coming out with another console in the next year or so. This could be one of those games that Nintendo needs to really establish a firm and popular audience on the second Switch, because Nintendo doesn't want a second Wii U. They would rather not have that. They would rather just have success after success after success, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get to that point. And so an actual banger Mario and Sonic game on their new console would be a perfect way to get people to tune into the console. And I know Sega wants to do it. So if Sega finds a concept that's going to impress Nintendo, then Nintendo is definitely going to be all for it. This is how huge the desire for a Mario and Sonic game is. The fact that people are actually legitimately upset at the series being canned is a testament in itself of how badly people want a Mario and Sonic crossover, a proper one. Because the fact that people were willing to settle for more generic, bland, and unchanged Olympic games in this series is everything you need to know to confirm the fact that people want a crazy Mario and Sonic experience. And if you play your cards right and come up with a concept that's going to really sell people on the game, then you could have one of the biggest games in both franchises. And that's an opportunity that Sega is definitely going to want to take, but they need to come up with a good idea for Nintendo to be impressed and to actually do it. I do think Nintendo will likely say yes if it's a good enough idea, because look at Mario and Rabbids, for instance. The Rabbids franchise was a much less likely franchise to collaborate with Mario. They're just not at the level Mario is. At least Sonic at one point could have been considered to be at Mario's level, but the Rabbids, they were never at Mario's level. And so the fact that Nintendo said yes to that collaboration really should tell you everything that Nintendo is willing to do these kind of collaborations. Again, Sega just has to come up with a clear-cut winning idea and present it to Nintendo. And so with the ending of the Olympic Games, I do think that now is the perfect time for an actual Mario and Sonic game to get into development. And who knows, it could already be in development because they would have had to know about this for years at this point. You never know, it could be getting worked on as we speak. And so the question I want to leave with you all is, what would you all want to see in a Mario and Sonic game? Would you want to see an action adventure game as you would expect? Or would you want to see something like a racing game, another party game, a fighting game, maybe an RPG? An RPG is the idea that really intrigues me the most. Maybe I'll make a video on some ideas I would love to see from Mario and Sonic game, but let me know your ideas in the comment section below. I'd be really curious, and I hope you understand what I'm saying. The Olympic Games really served its purpose. I think it really helped to curate that relationship between Nintendo and Sega Sega, and now they have a very strong relationship, and they could be in a better place to collaborate on a more intensive game than they would have been back then when they were first doing the Olympic Games. So hopefully they take advantage of this newfound space and they give us an actual Mario & Sonic title, because depending on what it could be, it honestly could be one of the most legendary titles of the entire gaming industry. And that sends chills down my spine. That does. I need to be up at GameStop right now with money in my hands, ready to buy the game. I need that to happen yesterday. But alright, y'all. Thank you so much. This is Riders, riding out.